He slid my own house key across the table and said, "We're done here." My son, 35 years old, sitting in the kitchen I built with my hands. I'd trusted him with that account 2 years back, when I went in for knee surgery and needed someone to keep the contractors paid while I was under. My name on the account, my routing number, my $47,000. The money I'd been setting aside to finish Carol's headstone, gone in 2 wire transfers over 4 days. 31 years in that house, 1 mortgage, almost paid off, $420,000 in equity. Everything Carol and I had built before she passed. And my son was sitting across from me like he'd already done the math and liked what came out. He'd driven 3 hours from Tucson to tell me this. Cassandra sat beside him, hands folded, saying nothing. She never says much when Derek is delivering lines she wrote. She just watches to see if they land. I'd known Cassandra Morell for 11 years. Sharp woman, sharper than Derek by a distance, which is not something a father says lightly about his own son. She had a way of restructuring situations until the outcome looked inevitable. Their finances, their social circle, which holidays they spent where. Everything arranged just enough that by the time Derek made a decision, he believed it was his idea. This had her fingerprints all over it. "You'll want to be reasonable," Derek said. His voice had a steadiness that didn't come natural to him, the kind you rehearse in the car. He had the look of a man who'd checked every box he knew about and shown up expecting a quiet negotiation. Not a fight, a surrender. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice or reach for my phone. I stood up, poured a second cup of coffee, and set it in front of him like it was any Saturday morning off Power Road. 3 weeks before Derek walked through my door, I had made one call. A Sunday, early enough that the coffee was still hot and the street was quiet. The man I called had been handling my property paperwork since 2004. He'd already done everything I asked him to do. Derek thought $47,000 was the story. He'd been so focused on the account, he'd never once looked at the deed. By Thursday morning, he was going to find out exactly whose name was and wasn't on that house. And he was going to find out that what he thought was a closing argument was actually the opening of something he was nowhere near ready for. He came here thinking he was done with me. He had no idea he hadn't even started. My son had taken $47,000, the money I'd set aside for Carol's headstone, and sat at my table like I owed him a conversation about it. He wanted to be reasonable. I'd been watching Cassandra's hands the whole time, still folded, still patient. People who have already won don't fidget. People who think they've already won don't either. "There's a larger conversation we came here to have," Derek said. He reached into the laptop bag by his chair. Cassandra's bag, I noticed, not his, and slid a folder across the table. Tabbed, color-coded. Somebody had spent time on this. A family trust. My house, my property, my 31 years of equity, folded into a legal structure with Derek listed as trustee. "For your protection," he said. "Estate planning. You're 62, Dad. This is what responsible families do." Cassandra spoke for the first time. "It simplifies everything after." She said it quietly, the way people say things they've rehearsed until the edges go smooth. No eye contact, just the folder. I looked at the tabs. The attorney's letterhead was dated 9 weeks ago. 9 weeks. While I was still trusting Derek with that account. While Carol's headstone money was still sitting there intact. I asked how long they'd been talking to an attorney. Derek said a few months. Cassandra said nothing, which was its own answer. I picked up the folder, looked at the first page, set it back down. Then I said the only thing I was willing to say right then. "I'll read it." Derek relaxed. Cassandra almost smiled. They thought that was the beginning of a negotiation. What it actually was me buying 48 hours I didn't need, because the paperwork I needed was already done. Now here's the part I keep turning over. I could have ended it right there, told them what I'd done 3 weeks prior, watched their faces change. Some of you would have. I didn't. I wanted to understand exactly how far they'd mapped this out before I showed them where the map ran out. That night, I found an email I'd nearly deleted, forwarded by mistake from the property management company that handled a rental I'd sold in 2021. A deed inquiry on my Mesa property, detailed, professional, filed 6 weeks ago, before the money disappeared, before Derek drove up, before any of this started. The name on the inquiry wasn't Derek Briggs. It was Cassandra Morell Briggs. Her maiden name, the one she stopped using 4 years ago. Derek hadn't started this. He'd just been sent to finish it. Cassandra Morell Briggs. Her maiden name. On a deed inquiry she filed 6 weeks before Derek drove up to tell me we were done. 6 weeks. The same month I buried Carol under the oak in the backyard. She hadn't started this after Carol died. She'd started it during. I didn't call Derek. I called Ray Cutler, my property attorney out of Scottsdale. Same man who'd handled every piece of paper on that house since 2004. I asked him one question. He gave me one answer. The transfer I'd requested 3 weeks ago had been recorded at the Maricopa County Recorder's Office. Done. Stamped. Legal. The house Derek and Cassandra had spent 6 weeks engineering a takeover of didn't belong to Walt Briggs anymore. 2 hours later, Derek called. His voice had changed. The rehearsed steadiness was gone. "I've spoken to someone," he said. "An attorney. His name is Vance Holbrook. He wants to meet." I told him Thursday worked fine. Derek paused, like he'd expected a fight. "That's it? Fine?" "That's it. Fine." Holbrook's office was on Camelback Road, 12 floors up, the kind of place where the chairs cost more than my first truck. He was younger than I expected, mid-40s, sharp suit, the particular confidence of a man who'd never once been out-prepared at his own table. Derek sat beside him. Cassandra sat one seat back, slightly removed, watching the way she always watched. Holbrook walked me through the family trust structure like he was doing me a courtesy. Organized, thorough. He'd done his homework on the property value, pulled the Zillow estimate, the tax assessment, even the original purchase price from 1993. He knew the equity down to the decimal. He just didn't know what I'd done with it. He asked me to confirm current ownership of the Mesa property as part of the formal record. I told him to pull the county records himself. He opened his laptop. It took less than a minute. The room changed the way rooms change when a number doesn't match what someone built their whole plan around. Holbrook's jaw didn't drop. Men like him don't drop their jaws. But his eyes went still, the kind of still that means recalculating fast and not liking where the numbers land. He looked up slowly. "Mr. Briggs, when exactly did you make this transfer?" Derek looked at Holbrook, then at me. He didn't understand the question yet, but he could feel that something had just left the room, something he'd been counting on, and it wasn't coming back. Holbrook's face didn't give much away, but Derek's did. He sat there staring at that laptop screen like a man who'd just stepped onto a floor that wasn't there. Holbrook recovered first. "That's what you're paying for at those rates." He said the transfer would need to be examined for proper procedure, for timing relative to any potential claims, for documentation of intent. Lawyer language. What it meant was, we're not done. They just needed a new angle. I drove back to Mesa on the 202, windows down, desert air still carrying that November bite off the superstitions. I wasn't celebrating. I'd been in enough situations to know that the moment you think it's over is exactly when it isn't. The call came 2 days later, not from Derek, from Ray Cutler. "Vance Holbrook filed a civil complaint this morning," Ray said. "Cassandra Morell Briggs is listed as the sole petitioner, not Derek." He let that land. "She's alleging the property transfer was executed under undue influence and requesting the court freeze the deed pending review." I let that sit. Derek wasn't on it, just Cassandra. She'd filed it without her own husband. Ray walked me through what a freeze would mean. 60 to 90 days minimum before any transfer could be acted on. During that window, the property would sit in legal limbo, untouchable, unsellable, a $420,000 asset locked behind a judge's order while attorneys billed by the hour on both sides. She wasn't trying to win the house. She was trying to exhaust me into settling. I'd seen that move before, not in a courtroom, but on job sites. A contractor who knows he's going to lose the bid doesn't fight the specs. He delays the timeline until the client runs out of patience and writes a check just to make it stop. Cassandra was doing the same thing, except the job site was my wife's house and the clock was my retirement. What she didn't know, what nobody had asked about yet, was the specific language Ray had drafted into the transfer 3 weeks before Derek ever knocked on my door. 1 paragraph, 4 sentences. Ray had written it deliberately, at my request, to address exactly this kind of challenge. I'd asked him to because I knew Derek, and I'd suspected Cassandra longer than Derek ever realized. Ray had one question before we responded to the filing. "Walt, do you want to end this quietly, or do you want it on record?" I didn't need long to answer. "On record," I told Ray. He didn't argue. He just said, "All right, give me 48 hours." The freeze motion hearing was set for a Tuesday morning at the Maricopa County Superior Court on West Jefferson. I wore the same jacket I'd worn to every contract signing for the last 20 years. The one Carol picked out at Dillard's the year we paid off the truck. No reason, just felt right. Holbrook presented first. The undue influence argument was clean, professionally assembled. He leaned on Walt Briggs's age, his recent loss, the timing of the transfer relative to Carol's passing. It was the kind of argument that works when nobody has looked too closely at the other side's calendar. Ray let him finish. Then he stood up and read 4 sentences into the record. The transfer had been initiated on a specific Sunday morning. Date and timestamp documented. The property attorney's engagement letter had been signed and notarized 14 days prior to that date. The transfer language had been drafted specifically to withstand a post-grief undue influence challenge. Ray had noted that in writing at the time of drafting, at the client's explicit direction. And the client had been assessed as fully competent by his physician at a routine appointment 9 days before the transfer was recorded. Then Ray submitted one additional exhibit. Cassandra Morell Briggs's deed inquiry, filed under her maiden name 6 weeks before the transfer, 8 weeks before Derek drove up to Mesa. She had been researching how to acquire that property before Walt Briggs had taken a single step to protect it. The party alleging undue influence had initiated her own acquisition process first. The freeze motion was denied. Deed transfer upheld. I didn't look at Cassandra when Ray sat down. I looked at Derek. He was staring at the exhibit, her maiden name on that inquiry date, working out the timeline the same way I had in my kitchen 3 weeks earlier, realizing she'd started this before he ever walked through my door. Maybe before he even knew there was a plan. Whatever she told him in that hallway afterward wasn't something I heard. I didn't need to. The $47,000 was a separate civil matter. Ray filed it the same week. Derek settled 4 months later. No hearing, no contest, no Cassandra anywhere near the paperwork. That December, I called the stonecutter in Gilbert, the one Carol had picked out herself 2 years before she got sick. Gave him the inscription she'd written down in the notepad she kept by the bed, paid for it with a personal check, my name only. The oak tree in the backyard is still there. So is the house. Both of them mine, same as they always were. Some men, when they've been hit that hard by someone they raised, need time to understand why. I didn't. I understood the night Derek slid that key across my kitchen table and said we were done. He thought he was closing something. He was opening the only door I still had left to shut.